I read about a new report this morning, actually, published by the World Bank on the future of aquaculture. You may have come across it. It said that aquaculture is potentially the largest sustainable food investment opportunity over the next 25 years, which is no small statement, and that it could generate as many as 22 million new jobs by 2050, with something like 1.5 trillion predicted investment opportunity in the sector over the same period. What do you make of these stats? They sound huge, borderline unbelievable.
I mean, I think if you think about it, we know that we have a population that will need more calories by 2050. I've heard numbers quoted 50%, right? We know that there's limited resources or limited space on terrestrial ecosystems to expand. We don't want to cut down more forests. We need to be more efficient. But if we're thinking about sustainable food systems, the ocean is 70% of the cover of the entire
The
planet,
planet.
right?
Yeah.
And rather than having it be a victim where it's suffering just from impacts of ocean acidification and climate change, if we can leverage the ocean and create resilient food systems that are both regenerative but also providing food security, it's this enormous opportunity. And this is the decade of the oceans. I think SDG 14, Life Underwater, is historically one of the most underfunded, and so that means that it has one of the biggest opportunities to have more investment and more funds put into it. So that was a big focus of the UN Ocean Conference that we had recently in Nice. There were so many conversations about how we can both protect the ocean, but also make sure that we're providing more opportunities for food security there. And so we know as well, I think in this study, you might have read that now aquaculture is surpassed wild caught fisheries in terms of the amount of food that's being produced. And so it's growing, and we've seen more interest in terms of investment. It's just a matter of, can we do it in a way that doesn't follow suit of intensive agriculture that causes environmental damage? Are we able to do this and learn from that agricultural revolution and have something new for aquaculture in a way that we can create a system that is good for the planet and for people and for the ecosystems underwater?
Absolutely. What do you see? The opportunity is there. That seems pretty clear. What do you see as the current biggest challenges still faced by aquaculture?
I think one of the biggest challenges is in communication. So we mentioned, there's stigma in terms of fish farms and opposition to that may be slightly outdated and may also be a company that's not representative of the entire industry. So communication and being more transparent and being able to share what's actually going on, I think is really important. On the other hand, I think that salmon aquaculture is only 2% of the total volume of fish produced out of all of aquaculture. Most of that growth is happening in Asia. 70% of it is happening there, and much of it is smallholder aquaculture. And so being able to expand or cause more growth in that space in a way that also does not damage the environment and that keeps that ecosystem balance in mind, I think will be one of the greatest challenges that we face, but one of the most important ones. And if we leverage technology correctly, it can help be a tool so that we don't go down, the same path of industrial intensification, but can have something that really does support place-based communities and place-based growth and support a growing industry that can really be good for the planet.
So, in terms of doing aquaculture properly and doing it sustainably, why is it not a no-brainer? What's the obstacle? Is it that it is more expensive to do it sustainably? Is it more difficult? What's the, you know, what's the holdback? And can technology overcome it?
I think that a lot of it has to do with the locations, with policy, with many different reasons. So, for example, in Norway, one of the greatest challenges of continuing industry growth is around the sea lice challenge, which is becoming more intense. And so, mitigation is really important there. It's also a matter of space. You have to do very intensive analysis of the ocean seafloor and the location and make sure there's enough water flow through and it won't interrupt, native species. And so there's a lot that goes into finding the correct location for it. Within the US, there's challenges around policy, but there's groups like the Coalition for Sustainable Aquaculture, which is supporting open ocean aquaculture and working with bipartisan groups to try and make sure that that can be done sustainably and in a science-based format. And so there it's more policy than other areas. And globally, I think that depending on where you are, there's different challenges. Maybe it's policy, maybe it's getting the correct siting, maybe it's having the investment to be able to scale infrastructure, any number of reasons. But I think that with any industry, we'll see growth in certain areas. And hopefully, if we're able to leverage the right tools, we can see it grow in a good direction rather than going in intensive and in a taking mindset instead of in a regenerative mindset.
In some cases, not to say that it is the case for tidal and for this sort of sector, but in some cases you see that private companies don't adopt a new process, a new technology, a new way of doing things the right way unless they are forced to, or obviously unless they have a strong financial incentive for doing so. Do you see policy as potentially affecting and influencing the adoption of technologies such as tidals in the future? Is it just a financial factor?
I think it's a combination of both. So, in some ways, let's take Norway, for example. In Norway, there's fairly strict lice level regulations. And so that means that rather than trying to pull fish out of the water and count in a non-statistically representative sample that they use to estimate for the rest of the population, you can use technology to automatically do that without pulling fish out of the water and risking higher mortality. That is a great benefit. And part of that is driven by the regulations that existed. On the other hand, these types of technologies, like I said, they can save a lot of money in terms of being more resource efficient, in terms of, being more effective in timing and other pieces. And so that's just a business benefit in and of itself, in addition to the efficiency and the sustainability that comes with it. And so, on one hand, I think that to really have scale technology for different industries in the ocean, we really do need to have things that make sense from a business standpoint. At the same time, if there's support from the policy perspective, I think that that only serves to help drive adoption more quickly. And depending on the way the regulation is set up, can really help drive more transparency as well, which allows you to measure more, which allows you to then make bigger changes that are more effective.